It's 7:30 p.m. across India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We get you the top stories from India and around the world. I'm Amritpal Singh, and for the news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Caroline Malone. Caroline, good to see you.
Good morning, Amrit. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we go live to outside the court in New York, where former fixer for Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, is giving his second day of testimony. But first, the headlines.
Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, testifies in the hush money trial for the second consecutive day. Cohen faces bruising questions from former president's lawyers. UK summons Chinese ambassador after 3 men were charged with spying for Hong Kong. China denounces the accusation. And big Hollywood names set to walk the red carpet for the 77th edition of the Cannes Film Festival in France. India's entry, All We Imagine is Light, among the 22 films vying for the coveted Palme d'Or. UK's foreign ministry has summoned the Chinese ambassador after 3 Hong Kong nationals were charged with spying for the Hong Kong intelligence. The trio have been accused of assisting a foreign intelligence service between December last year and May this year by agreeing to undertake information gathering, surveillance and acts of deception in Britain. China has firmly rejected and strongly condemned UK's accusation against the Hong Kong government.
China has built an advanced set of cyber capabilities and is taking advantage of growing commercial ecosystem of hacking outfits and data brokers at its disposal. China poses a genuine and increasing cyber risk to the UK.
And DD India's John Beaver joins us, sent us this report from London.
Certainly the UK believes that it is very serious, and a statement that we have seen from the Foreign Office certainly reiterates that, as does the very summoning of the Chinese ambassador to the Foreign Office, which is no small step. That is a very bold statement from the UK in terms of what they have described as a pattern of recent behaviour that is unacceptable. The statement from the Foreign Office goes on to say it includes cyber attacks, reports of espionage links and the issuing of bounties. And the Foreign Office again saying that is not acceptable. So certainly strong words from the UK. And of course, as well as those concerns to do with cyber attacks and these espionage links, we have 3 men appearing in court yesterday. They are charged under the National Security Act, and that is all to do with foreign interference on behalf of the Hong Kong government. So certainly the UK taking this very seriously. As you mentioned, though, the Chinese have been very quick to refute this and coming out with a strong statement themselves. The Chinese ambassador saying the series of accusations against China were unwarranted, going on to describe them as groundless and slanderous. So certainly the two sides not backing down from what they believe are very serious accusations. You would imagine that the next step from here would be the expulsion of diplomats, of members of diplomatic staff. But I think it's important to say that I don't think we're at that step yet. Certainly there has been nothing official that could be coming. You would imagine, though, and in similar situations to this in the past with other foreign powers, certainly that is very much the first thing that happens after the summoning of a high-level diplomat.
Georgia's parliament voted on Tuesday to approve the third and the final reading of a bill on foreign agents that has caused a political crisis and mass protests in the nation. The legislation now faces a likely veto by Georgia's president, which the parliament can override by holding an additional vote. Georgia's government says that the legislation is needed to promote transparency and preserve the country's sovereignty. Thousands are protesting near the parliament in Tbilisi against the controversial Kremlin-like bill. Protesters are concerned that the bill, once it becomes a law, would be used by the government to stifle the voice of its critics. The Kremlin has said outside powers are meddling in Georgia's affairs despite attempts by the leadership in Tbilisi to prevent such actions. The European Union said the bill, which says organizations receiving more than 20% of their funding from abroad should register as agents of foreign influence, threatens Georgia's bid to join the bloc. The ruling Georgian Dream Party says the legislation is needed to enhance NGO funding transparency and protect the country from interference by Western powers. On to the other conflict raging in West Asia between Israel and Hamas. Heavy fighting is underway both in South and North Gaza. Israeli forces pushed deep into Gaza's northern edge on Monday to recapture an area from Hamas. While in the south, tanks and troops pushed across the highway into Rafah. Qatar's Prime Minister Al Thani said on Tuesday that the talks over a ceasefire in Gaza have reached a stalemate due to Israel's operations in Rafah. Earlier, Israeli operations in Rafah have closed a main crossing point for humanitarian aid from the border with Egypt. And Israeli forces pushed deep into Gaza's northern edge on Monday to recapture an area from Hamas, while in the south, tanks and troops pushed across a highway into Rafah.
It's been actually a very long process, and especially in the past few weeks, we have seen some momentum building, but unfortunately, things didn't move in the right direction. And right now, we are in a status of almost a stalemate. Of course, what happened with Rafah has set us backward a little bit.
And Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen's testimony is currently underway in a New York court for the second day. Caroline Malone is in Washington, D.C. and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines from around the world. Well, Caroline, more embarrassment for Donald Trump as a former friend turns foe?
Well, potentially, the former US President Donald Trump's ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen, is testifying for a second day at the Republican presidential candidate's criminal hush money trial. Well, in his statements on Monday, Cohen actually said that Donald Trump approved a plan to reimburse $130,000 paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels as a hush money payment. And he hid the reimbursements by creating false records. And it's those reimbursements that provide the basis for the 34 counts of falsifying business records that Trump faces. Well, meanwhile, US House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson has joined Trump at his New York trial to show support. Johnson is the latest and most senior party member to attend the proceedings. Well, DD India's Sally Patterson joins us now from New York. So, Sally, we heard from Cohen yesterday. What are we expecting today, and are there any implications for Trump's campaign for the White House again?
Well, Caroline, another day of testimony from Michael Cohen is kicking off here in New York City. And really, for many of us following this case, this is the witness that we've all been waiting to hear from, because he is an absolutely pivotal witness for the prosecution, and he could be the one that sways the jury either way. We're still hearing from the prosecution at the moment, and then it could be the case that the cross-examination begins by Trump's team. They're likely to try and undermine Cohen's credibility as a witness in this case. He is a felon in his own right. He served time in prison. So they're going to likely point at that, and also point to the fact that he has admitted in the past to lying to Congress. Trump is here surrounded by some of his Republican allies who have continued to show support for the former president, who is, of course, running for the White House once again. Trump, on his way into court on Tuesday, said that this was the greatest effort to steal a federal election in American political history, and he once again called this case a scam. He has accused the trial and the judge in overseeing this case, Juan Merchan, of being an agent of President Joe Biden to try and basically distract the public from his White House bid and keep him off the campaign trail and inside a courtroom instead. He is a criminal defendant, so needs to spend every day that court is in session inside the room. Now, what we've been hearing from Cohen over the past day and a bit is really that he was a loyal and obedient employee to Donald Trump, who he served for many years as his lawyer and fixer. And he said nothing happened in the Trump organization without Trump's watchful eye over it. He says that all the decisions that were made not only had Trump's watchful eye on them, but actually had Trump's approval as well. And that's going to be key to this prosecution's case, that not only did Donald Trump see what was going on, but he was the one who gave it the go-ahead. Cohen said in court that he wouldn't have ever made this payment of $130,000 to adult film star Stormy Daniels without Trump telling him to do so. We've been hearing the details in Cohen's testimony of how that money was then allegedly paid back to Michael Cohen, who'd forked out that original payment. They said that it was going to be over 12 months in small checks, which would be paid back, and the prosecution alleges that that money was then filed as a legal expense, basically paying for Cohen's legal fees and legal knowledge, rather than paying what they say it was, which is a cover-up to try and keep Daniels quiet about an affair she said she had with the former president in 2006. Trump has pleaded not guilty, as you say, to 34 criminal counts. He could face time behind bars if found guilty. Caroline.
Well, thank you, Sally. That was Sally Patterson reporting from New York. Voters in 3 US states, Maryland, West Virginia and Nebraska, will cast ballots in primaries on Tuesday. In Maryland, Republican former Governor Larry Hogan is expected to dominate the state's GOP Senate primary. In Republican-dominated West Virginia, Governor Jim Justice and US Representative Alex Mooney are the leading GOP candidates. In Nebraska, Republican Senator Pete Ricketts is favored to win a special election for the seat he was appointed to in 2023. The White House has quadrupled electric vehicle duties to reach a 100% tariff on Chinese-made cars as a measure to protect US manufacturers from cheap imports. US President Joe Biden said they're imposing more stringent curbs on Chinese goods worth $18 billion to counter what it calls unfair practices that flood the market with cheap goods. The tariffs on electric vehicles are increasing from 25%, put in place by former President Donald Trump. New measures will also impact Chinese imports of computer chips, medical products, steel, aluminium and semiconductors. Well, reacting to this, the German Chancellor said that around half of Chinese e-car imports actually come from Western manufacturers.
I would like to point out that currently at least 50% of imports of electric vehicles from China come from Western brands that produce there themselves and import to Europe. We should not forget that European manufacturers as well as some American manufacturers are successful on the Chinese market and also sell a lot of vehicles that are produced in Europe to China.
Marken kommen, die selber dort produzieren und
Well, following the US tariffs against China, the Italian economy minister, Giancarlo Giorgetti, said that the G7 will discuss the risk of fragmentation in global trade at the G7 meeting in Italy next week. Well, the finance ministers will also discuss how to use frozen Russian assets that were seized after Moscow invaded Ukraine. Well, DD India's Nick Harper has more from Washington, D.C.
Well, this is a huge list of products imported from China that will now face increased tariffs, a dramatic rise in goods worth about $18 billion in total. EVs in particular making the headlines, jumping from 25% tariff to 100% for any Chinese-made electric vehicles entering the United States. Lithium-ion EV batteries rising from 7.5% to 25%. Cells used to make solar panels jumping from 25 to 50%, and then a few other bits and pieces, things that are used in the medical profession, things like syringes and needles rising from 0% to 50%, and PPE jumping from 0% to 25%. We're also told that tariffs on semiconductors over the next couple of years will double from 25 to 50%. And really all of this as a way for the Biden administration to signal to voters less than 6 months before the presidential election that the US president is fighting for US manufacturing, is fighting for US jobs. For a long time, the Biden administration has been pushing back against China, accusing them of unfair trade practices, accusing them of flooding the market with cheap Chinese-made products. The Biden administration saying that these tariffs are needed to protect US economic policies, but also to protect jobs. So fighting for jobs, trying to push these tariffs as a vote winner, but doing so potentially at the expense of relations with Beijing. We have seen in recent months a real attempt from the Biden administration to improve those one-on-one relations with China. We had a phone call just a month ago between US President Joe Biden and China's leader Xi Jinping aimed at trying to stabilize those rocky relations. We've had US officials visiting Beijing for high-level meetings, and yet this latest set of tariffs is undoubtedly going to anger Beijing, potentially undercutting those relations that the US has been trying to stabilise. So pushing in two different directions at the same time, saying to voters, I'm here to protect your jobs, but perhaps doing so at the expense of that relationship with Beijing. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Well, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv on Tuesday. During their meeting, Blinken assured Zelensky that a new US weapons package is on its way to Kyiv and said it was going to have an impact on the battlefield in Ukraine.
All of us admire your extraordinary resilience, your endurance, your strength, your leadership. And we know this is a challenging time, but we also know that in the near term, the assistance is now on the way. Some of it's already arrived, more of it will be arriving. And that's going to make a real difference against the ongoing Russian aggression on the battlefield. And we're determined, along with many other partners for Ukraine, to make sure that you succeed on the battlefield.
Well, meanwhile, Zelensky has lauded the crucial US aid and said they do need more air defence, asking for 2 Patriot air defence batteries for the northeastern region of Kharkiv.
Thank you for this signal. Also, I wanted to thank you from all my team, all Ukrainians, to crucial package for our forces, for our warriors. We are thankful for bipartisan support. I want to discuss with you about some today, about some, I think, very important issues. The first, the decision on the package was crucial for us. It's very important to get it as quick as possible. And the second one point is air defense, the biggest deficit for us.
Well, US Secretary of State Blinken also had a working lunch with his Ukrainian counterpart, Dmitry Kuleba. Blinken's trip is the first by a senior US official to Ukraine since the US Congress passed a long-delayed $61 billion aid package in April. Well, meanwhile, France has also pledged to deliver extra military aid to Ukraine in the coming weeks. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio, Amrit.
Thank you, Caroline, for that. And still to come on DD India Global, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi files nomination papers for election from the Varanasi Lok Sabha seat for the 3rd time. Death toll from flash floods and mudslides in Indonesia rises to at least 50.
versus facts. In-depth news and analysis with experts who will help you decide why this election matters. DD India is the main election headquarters with numbers most accurate, data most reliable, and viewership across the platforms. Stay tuned to the Great Indian Election only on weekdays at 8:30 p.m. IST and 1500 hours GMT.
You're watching DD India Global. I'm Amritpal Singh. Up first, we get you up to speed with the latest on the world's largest democratic election exercise, which is currently on in India. India's Prime Minister and BJP leader Narendra Modi filed his nomination papers from the Varanasi constituency on Tuesday. Varanasi Lok Sabha seat is a constituency from where Prime Minister Modi has secured 2 wins, one in 2014, one in 2019. With these 2 consecutive terms he served, his margin has improved in 2019. This time around, when he went for filing these nomination papers, Pandit Gyaneshwar Shastri, who's a member of the Brahmin community and is also known for determining the auspicious time for the consecration of the Ram temple in Ayodhya, and also Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath accompanied the Prime Minister inside the nomination centre. India's Prime Minister is seeking a 3rd consecutive term as Member of Parliament from the Varanasi constituency, which will go to the polls on the 1st of June. That's in the 7th and the final phase of general elections in India. The results will be declared on the 4th of June. And leaders from other political parties also filed their nominations on Tuesday, as today is the last day for filing nominations for the 7th and the last phase of India's general elections. BJP's candidate from the Mandi constituency, who's also a Bollywood star, Kangana Ranaut, filed her nomination papers in Himachal Pradesh. BJP has fielded the actor against Congress candidate and Himachal Pradesh Minister Vikramaditya Singh in the Mandi Lok Sabha constituency. And Congress's candidate, who's also a former union minister, Manish Tiwari, filed his nomination papers from Chandigarh that will vote on the 1st of June, the last phase of the ongoing general elections. Tiwari will face or is facing BJP's Sanjay Tandon. And let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Argentina prices continue to climb slowly as the country's annual inflation rate edged close to 300% ahead of the government's release of the latest inflation data on Tuesday. Shopkeepers and consumers said that despite the inflation rate going down, the benefits were not being felt on the ground. The death toll from flash floods and mudslides in Indonesia's West Sumatra province has risen to at least 50. Authorities on Tuesday said that more than 3,000 people have been evacuated. Heavy rains are expected to continue until next week. And big names and previous Palme d'Or winners are set to walk the red carpet of the Cannes Film Festival 77th edition. DD India's Munman Bhattacharya visited the Bharat Pavilion, or which is the India's pavilion there, which is the hub for India's film fraternity at Cannes.
This is the Bharat Pavilion at the 108 Village International Riviera on the Mediterranean coast. Like every year, it becomes the hub for the Indian film fraternity at Cannes. It showcases Indian cinema to the world and thus becomes a vehicle of India's soft power. This year, the National Film Development Corporation, under the aegis of India's Information and Broadcasting Ministry, has set up a 223 square meter venue. It has an all-new modern look as per international standards and is managed by industry body FICCI. It is customizable to the industry's requirements and overlooks the beautiful Riviera coastline. The Bharat Pavilion showcases India as the Sutradhar of the world's stories and how she shapes visual culture. The design concept was conceived by India's National Institute of Design. The Sutradhar encompasses a much wider and prominent position within Natya Shastra, almost similar to the conductor of an orchestra. Much like the India Pavilion at Cannes is an invocation of what she is set to create and offer this year, the Sutradhar aptly is responsible for creating an atmosphere of austerity. At the Bharat Pavilion, India will be engaging in speed dating with film industry representatives from the UK, Spain, Australia and New Zealand on film co-productions. There will also be roundtables with heads of international film festivals from around the world. The pavilion offers ample space for meetings, hangout spaces, a terrace for evening receptions and a reception area with dedicated kiosks to book meetings. The Bharat Pavilion will be inaugurated on the 15th of May in the presence of India's Information and Broadcasting Secretary Sanjay Jaju, India's Ambassador to France and Monaco Javed Ashraf and Canadian filmmaker Richie Mehta, among other Indian and international celebrities. For the first time, India is organizing a Bharat Parv, which is an Indian festival of sorts where Indian talent and opportunities will be showcased, and India's two marquee international film festivals, MIF, which is Mumbai International Film Festival, and IFFI, which is the International Film Festival of India in Goa, will be promoted. With cameraman YK Loknath, this is Munmun Bhattacharya from Cannes for DD India.
And DD India's Munmun Bhattacharya now joins me from Cannes. Munmun, give us a sense of what the global buzz around the red carpet, which kicks off in a little while, in a few hours, at where you are.
Absolutely, like you said, Amrit, in a few hours from now, the opening ceremony begins, and there Meryl Streep is going to be the guest of honor. She's a celebrated Hollywood actor, a legend of sorts. She was here 35 years ago when she won the award for the best actress for a film, Evil Angels, and now she's returning after 35 years. Of course, one should know here that she's been nominated for a record 21 times for the Oscars. So she is going to be honored here with an honorary Palme d'Or in recognition of her contribution to world cinema. After that, we will see the opening film of the Cannes Film Festival. It is the second act. It's a comedy by French director Quentin Dupieux, and it is on cinema itself. And this is also the day when this particular movie will be screened in French theatres as well. So this is going to happen simultaneously. So besides that, of course, a lot of focus on the red carpet. We'll definitely see Meryl Streep here as she walks up and before she attends the opening ceremony and later sees the opening film. And of course, a lot of focus on India as well, because after 30 years, Indian film is in the competition section. It is competing for Palme d'Or, which is given to the director of the best film. And the last time India made it to the competition section was 30 years ago when Swaham was screened here in competition in 1994. It is by Shaji and Karun. And there's only once that India has won the top prize. It was called the Grand Prix then, it's called the Palme d'Or now, and that was in 1946 when Chetan Anand's Nichanagar had won. So a lot of spotlight on India as well. It's part of the global buzz here. Besides that, there are 22 films that are competing. One of them, like I said, is All We Imagine Is Light by Payal Kapadia. In fact, she had won in 2021 here the Best Documentary Award for A Night of Knowing Nothing. And in the Cannes Classic section, Manthan by Shyam Benegal is going to be screened, and that is again an opportunity for India to show the world the kind of heritage it has historically as far as Indian cinema is concerned. And a lot of focus on a number of American directors' films as well as from others. And of course, there's a cloud of Me Too allegations here against several French directors, actors and producers, but that doesn't seem to have lessened the crescendo much. A short film on this subject is going to be screened as a symbolic move.
All right. So, Munmun, even while you report from there, have fun, enjoy yourself. Thank you for joining for the moment. And that's it in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India. Available both on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR codes on your screen, you see on your screens right now to download. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Amritpal Singh, and from our entire team in Delhi and also in Washington DC, thanks for watching DD India Global.